So today we're going to talk about something called the discriminant. The formula for the discriminant is b squared minus 4a. It's the number underneath the square root in your quadratic formula. Remember, your quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So the discriminant is just the number underneath the square root. If you look at your quadratic formula for a minute, it now gives us three important things. The entire quadratic formula gives us the roots, or the solutions, or the zeros, or the answers to my quadratic equation. This outside piece, which I sometimes call the boot, x equals negative b over 2a, you should recognize as the axis of symmetry of the graph of the quadratic equation, the parabola. And now you know that the inside piece is called the discriminant. What the discriminant does for us is it tells us about the roots without us having to solve. And I was leading you into that yesterday when we solved problems with the quadratic formula. So, what you want to know is that the discriminant tells us about the roots without solving. So, if we look at the problems we solved yesterday, we solved x squared plus 2x minus 3 equals 0. We solved x squared plus 3x equals 5. We also solved 25x squared minus 8x equals 12x minus 4. And finally we solved negative x squared plus 4x equals 13. So, yesterday we solved those. We know what the roots are. If you go back into the cumulative notes, you can find them. But today let's talk about what if we don't want to solve, we just want to know what the roots look like. Here's what you would do. We would just find the value of b squared minus 4ac. So here, in number 1, x squared plus 2x minus 3 equals 0. If I find the value of b squared minus 4ac, the discriminant, well, b squared, 2 squared is 4, minus 4 times a is 1, times c is negative 3. And we simplify that. So 4, negative 4 times 1 is negative 4, times negative 3 is positive 12. 4 plus 12 is 16. The discriminant is 16. When we solved that quadratic yesterday, we got two roots. They were rational numbers, and they were not equal. So this is a perfect square number. Whenever I get a perfect square number as a value of my discriminant, my roots are rational and unequal. We'll also use the words real sometimes, but we have two rational unequal roots when that number, that value of my discriminant, is a perfect square. So a perfect square discriminant gives us roots that are rational and unequal. Let's go back to number 2. Number 2, yesterday we solved x squared plus 3x equals negative 5. When we first set that equal to 0, and then we can evaluate the discriminants, b squared minus 4ac. Well, 3 squared is 9, minus 4 times a is 1, times c is negative 5. Clean it up, we get 9. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4, times negative 5 is positive 20. So my discriminant is 29. 29 is a non-perfect square number. You cannot simplify that square root. So when we completed that and finished solving it, I got irrational unequal roots. When I have a non-perfect square discriminant, my roots are irrational. In the third problem we solved yesterday, we had 25x squared minus 8x equals 12x minus 4. Again, we needed to set it equal to 0. When we found the value of its discriminant, b squared minus 4ac, we get negative 20 squared is 400 minus 4 times a is 25 times c is 4. Clean it up. Negative 4 times 25 is negative 100 times 4 is minus 400. 400 minus 400 is 0. The value of my discriminant was 0. When I finished solving that, I had 2 equal roots. When your discriminant is 0, you'll always have 2 equal roots. And finally, the last problem we solved yesterday, negative x squared plus 4x equals 13. Again, we set that equal to 0. X squared minus 4x plus 13. When we evaluate the discriminant, b squared minus 4ac, we get negative 4 squared is 16 minus 4 times a was 1 times c was 13. Clean it up. 16 minus 52 gave us negative 36. The value of the discriminant was negative 36, and I ended up with imaginary roots because that number under my square root was negative. When the discriminant is negative, you get imaginary roots. To summarize, there are 4 cases. We use the discriminant b squared minus 4ac to tell us about the roots without solving. 4 cases. If the discriminant is 0, the key word is that I have equal roots. You'll also hear real and rational, but equal is the key word. If my discriminant is negative, I have imaginary roots. A negative discriminant yields imaginary roots. If my discriminant is a perfect square, I have 2 unequal rational roots. And finally, if my discriminant is a non-perfect square, I have 2 unequal irrational roots. That's it. Get your information in your cumulative notes and do some practice. Have a good night.